Hi, I'm Marty Gold with a commentary on the 2023 Manitoba provincial election. CBC is busy trying to pump up their so-called investigation as they and the Winnipeg Free Press have been tag-teaming the reputation of Kevin Klein, the PC incumbent in Kirkfield Park, for a while. And CBC, I guess it was a slow news weekend, they dished up a real Nothingburger with a headline that is intended to insinuate that Kevin Klein, in defending himself, was somehow wrong or rude, when in fact, he was neither. But that didn't matter to CBC because the whole premise of the story is to let them regurgitate their own position, although this time they did add a few extra details. Details that I actually revealed in the first place about the consequences of their so-called reporting. But I digress. The story in question, placed online on Sunday, Manitoba PC candidate Kevin Klein tells voter she has no right to question his Indigenous heritage. This resulted from a town hall conversation that was recorded. So this is one of these telephone town halls that took place in particular in the pre-election period. And very often these are designed to be a gauge of public opinion on different things, test out the waters with certain kinds of policy ideas and proposals. In this case, this caller was recording the call from her end apparently being the New Democratic Party end, as the NDP, according to CBC, provided the audio tape. Now, CBC's description of the tape was sort of true but false. It provided some quotes from it. The caller, a female, tried to grind Klein in a question about lack of Indigenous representation in the Conservative caucus and party and policies, all of which were debatable. And then this fake question turned into a personal run at Kevin Klein in the town hall. I was interested to see her opinion on Indigenous people, and this was tied into the refusal to fund $184 million for a landfill search for two missing women believed to be murdered and whose remains are believed to be in a landfill. Premier Stephenson's fortunes in the provincial election seemed to coincide with standing firm on this and the activist crowd bellowing at high decibels, saying, raising various insults and saying things that were simply unsupported by the general public. Klein standing by his leader in that regard. Well, you don't really have any Indigenous members in the caucus, is the way it goes. You aren't committing to a landfill search. And the magic question was, I want to know, said this woman, quote, why you feel that you can appropriate Indigenous identity but not actually do anything for Indigenous people in Manitoba. Now, as I reported on the Great Canadian Talk Show podcast a couple of weeks ago, and it's not even a couple of weeks ago, Kevin Klein confronted the MSM smear campaign. Something gets published one place, then it gets repeated somewhere else. Then opinion columns come up in the point of origin, and back and forth it goes, building to a crescendo. Now CBC's tried to pile on this recording as part of this same debate, when in fact there is no debate, because that caller had no right to question his Indigenous heritage. He was absolutely right. Let me tell you how I know these things. People will say anything, when they have an axe to grind with an individual. And when it goes to the realm of ethnicity, heritage, origins, believe it or not, people have tried it with me. As editor of a national online Jewish newspaper, an individual a couple of years ago who decided to pick a fight because I happened to be aligned with people that they didn't like, and this individual was particularly woke, and I leave it at that, tried to tell my publisher that I was a liar and a faker, that I was not really Jewish, that my family name was not Jewish but Catholic, and that I, in fact, had been removed from previous broadcast positions because of my anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, my publisher has known me since he was 12 years old. This individual, might I add, wasn't very anonymous. In fact, they worked for a national polling company and had all sorts of false and anti-Semitic things to say, all sorts of smears to toss around. So I myself have lived through this, where people say something is just completely not just indefensible and rude, but offensive. I've lived through it myself. Now, maybe this individual had some sort of standing, maybe in real life, but it seems unlikely they would have said, as a Métis person myself, as a member of this or that, as a member of the MS, something. There was nothing there. It was all a setup. A question gets asked, an inflammatory question that is completely out of the realm of civil debate and discussion. Klein's reaction was actually, I thought, rather restrained, because I can't repeat what I would have told this dame. He said, I know you're angry. I never did it for any gain. I did it for connection to my family, talking about seeking Métis status with the organization in Ontario. You don't have a right to question my Indigenous heritage. Now, that is absolutely factual. CBC puts it in the headline and makes it sound like he was doing what exactly? Ducking the question? That he was being rude to her? What was the point of it? Again, the point of it was to regurgitate the allegations that a CBC investigation couldn't identify any genealogical evidence going back 5 generations in their investigation of Klein's cultural identity. CBC reported, Klein told the August Town Hall, that CBC's reporting contained incorrect family tree information, and he has had DNA and the actual familial research. And that is, again, what he told me on the Great Canadian Talk Show podcast. So his story has been consistent. What I also revealed on that podcast on September 11th, boy, time flies, I thought it was a couple of weeks ago. CBC reporting that Klein's lawyers served a notice of libel in late August, which alleged CBC's reporting was calculated to cancel Mr. Klein, diminish his reputation amongst his community, members of the government of the public, was done to disparage, injure, and undermine Mr. Klein. The note, the lawyer's note, demanding a retraction of these stories and an unequivocal apology. And now we see that CBC has doubled down, repeating the allegations, and doing another kind of a drive-by by taking this Nothingburger. Something was said that was clearly inappropriate, unconnected to Tory policy or to any of Klein's policies. The allegation of appropriating Indigenous identity. Identity politics comes up a lot in this election, almost always from one side. One commenter on Twitter noting the irony that the NDP is saying Klein is lying about who he is while completely ignoring and embracing, actually, the candidate who ran against him, pot meat kettle. That would be because of a complete change in gender identification over the past 7 to 10 years, I think it was, of Klein's opponent in Kirkfield Park. That's completely accepted. Klein's assertion that his family tree indicates certain roots that he identifies with somehow becomes controversial. As another commenter said, this is bordering on character assassination. And they noted the caller was a bit of a bitch. Now, this CBC story, to end this off, quotes a Métis lawyer named Jeanne Taillot, who is Louis Riel's great-grandniece. She said a person can self-identify as Klein has, but without the recognition or acceptance or whatever you want to call it from the community that you're part of them, you have nothing. You have only your own ego and your own little claim. Well, here's what Louis Riel, her great-granduncle, actually said. It's true that our Indian origin is humble, but it is indeed just that we honor our mothers as well as our fathers. Why should we be so preoccupied with what degree of mingling we have of European and Indian blood? No matter how little we have of one or the other, do not both gratitude and filial love require us to make a point of saying we are Métis? That's what Louis Riel said, completely contradicting the CBC's so-called expert, his descendant, a Métis lawyer. You don't have only your own ego and your own little claim. No matter how little we have of European blood or Indian blood, Riel said, both gratitude and filial love requires us to make a point of saying we are Métis. Now, without saying that he's not trying to identify as a Red River Métis, but the principle of what used to be called in Riel's time half-breeds, mixed blood people. Making a point of saying, in this case, Klein, based on his family's understanding, his family history, we are Métis of an Ontario variety, would have been good enough for Louis Riel in 1870, but somehow not good enough for his descendants and for the CBC today. A big nothing burger. This is Marty Gold. I'll be back with more news, analysis, commentary, and opinion about the 2023 Manitoba provincial election for winnipegtribune.ca.